To look at it, you wouldn't guess that this sculpture of a girl picking flowers took years for me to figure out and was so challenging that I almost gave up. Watch how I took a wad of clay like this and, overcoming adversities, transformed it into one of my best sculptures ever. It started with a photo shoot with my great niece. In between shooting, while she was waiting on me, she was just standing there. When I looked up, I yelled, "That's it, don't move," and started taking pictures. Sometimes with a sculpture, the pose comes first and you figure everything else out later. But figuring everything else out is where I started having problems. I threw together a couple of clay studies. I wasn't trying to make finished sculptures, I was just trying to figure out the design and some other details. But I was struggling. Nothing hit a nerve, and I was starting to have more questions than answers. What's the storyline? What should she be wearing? Should she be full-bodied or partial? I didn't even know if she should be pioneer, Native American, or Western at all. I couldn't figure out the answers and didn't like the studies, so I shelved it. The idea literally sat on a shelf in my studio and mulled around in my brain for 2 years. Until finally, I came across the perfect answer. Among other crops such as corn and beans, Native Americans domesticated squash, and squash plants have beautiful flowers. I could imagine a Native American girl picking them, maybe for her mother to cook because the flowers are edible. In fact, squash is so important that Navajo Indians make a squash blossom necklace, which has little decorations symbolizing the flower. I was getting excited because now I had a very strong storyline for the sculpture. I had solved one problem, but more lay ahead. Could I make a strong design? Could I figure out all the other details? And the biggest, could I even get close, and should I even try to make a lump of clay look like a living, breathing person? I wasn't sure, and I knew I had a lot more work to do. The next time my niece was in town, we did some live modeling sessions where I actually sculpted with her standing right in front of me. For me, this is the best way to take it to the next level because I can see depth, angles, and details that photographs just can't provide. But sculpting live also has its disadvantages, as I found out when I tried to sculpt live squash blossoms too. One scraggly squash plant in our garden had survived the spring storms. For about a week and a half, I would go out there early. I put the sculpture on a footstool and I'd sit on an upside-down bucket and wait. There would only be one flower at a time, and each flower would only open once for a little while on a random morning. I found all of this out the hard way. Now it was down to solving 1,000 small challenges, as each little detail had to be refined. Slowly, it started to come together. For me, there's a lot of intense focus at this stage. I'll lose myself for hours and even days when it's just my fingers, the clay, and the idea I'm trying to express. After the last smudge of clay, imprint of the tools, and literally hundreds of hours of work, it was finally finished in clay. But it still wasn't in its final form. For that, I had to take it to a bronze art foundry. The foundry process took several months and was challenging in itself, as the sculpture went through several stages and involved many expert hands. I brought it home after it was cast in bronze, and the last little challenge was shaping the wooden base. The sculpture itself is tall and narrow, so I decided that the base should be the same way. This turned out to be the perfect finishing touch. After a final wax and polish, my sculpture, Squash Blossoms, was finally completely finished. It was a very involved process, actually stretching over several years, with a lot of changes and hard work along the way. But I think it was worth it. I hope you do too. Here it is.